This is a story based on a child I met and helped during my professional experience. The school was in a suburban coastal area where I was placed in a kindergarten and year 1 classroom. There was one boy, let's call him Marco, in this class who disrupted a lot of the children around him by talking or hurting the other students. He was in year 1 but wrote and read at a low kindergarten level. In fact, his behaviour was infantile. The teacher had tried hard to keep him involved, but he became frustrated and used a louder voice with Marco in stressful situations. This fueled his aggression and made his desire to participate within the classroom minimal. The teacher explained with some sympathy that his father was not available for Marco, he was in jail, and that his mother was experiencing difficulties raising Marco and was struggling with his eating habits. At this stage, he was being treated for ADHD. A pioneer in this field of critical pedagogy is Paulo Freire, who has influenced teachers with his progressive practice of pedagogy, which explores education as a cultural action and highlights education forms that treat students as objects rather than subjects. Freire explores the analysis of the relationships developed between the educator and the students, exploring the questions of learning and of teaching, of the knowing, teaching, learning process, of authority, of freedom, of reading, of writing, of the virtues of the educator, and that of respect for a student's cultural background. Marco was interested in a visiting book fair. He became extremely excited because he had just watched Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. He had found the picture book with illustrations of the beasts. His mother attended the book fair and I spoke with her. I was able to establish a rapport with her and able to discover more of Marco's situation. We discussed gardening as a means of changing his diet, to moving away from being babied by his mother. Marco and I continued our discussions of the picture books. We talked about the film he enjoyed so much. Having just watched the movie myself, I knew the creatures and all their special abilities. This knowledge and our conversation encouraged Marco to pursue knowledge through the graphic illustrations. He then proceeded to discuss the book and showed interest in learning more about these books and different creatures. Another professional in the field of education is Tim Strafford, who has written Teaching Visual Literacy in the Primary Classroom, comic books, film, television, and picture narratives. Strafford talks of visual literacy being a great technique used in the development of narrative literacy. That visual literacy, is the active process of reading, interpreting, and understanding images and visual media. This is not, of course, to say that any given image necessarily contains an essential, correct meaning which we need to decode, but rather that developing our visual literacy provides us with the skills to analyze what we see effectively and offer our own informed interpretations of it. Therefore, visual literacy is not simply an ability that we possess, it is something that we do and requires us to develop a set of quite specific skills and abilities. Through the engagement at the book fair was a great opportunity for me to try to make this boy feel comfortable around teachers and to communicate without becoming distressed and agitated in the classroom, which would lead him to stating, "I don't get it, it's boring." So finding something that gave this boy an involvement and a desire to be engaged was one means of breaking down the negative discourse that this student brought with him. Upon some research, I found some books such as Looking at Beasties by June Bruins and the beautifully illustrated Edward Lear poetry book called The Scroopius Pig, with illustrations by Ogden Nash. These helped highlight Marco's opportunity to discover further literacy and writing opportunities. As he would look fascinatedly at these pictures and want to read the books. Another opportunity to turn around his deficit discourse followed after a brief interaction with his mother. I suggest that she read or begin reading the Harry Potter stories to Marco, so he could have the opportunity to become interested in reading and storytelling. This boy was visually very alert, having highlighted how pictures are made and films are made. This interaction provided an opportunity for me to create a lesson around beasts that could interest the whole classroom, using the picture book The Gruffalo by Julie Johnson and Axel Scheffler. I was able to read it to the class and then encourage them to create an artwork based on their own Gruffalos. This gave Marco a great thrill, I suggested that he use the poster he had made of fantastic beasts and where to find them, and he labelled the creatures he had drawn and presented it for his show and tell that week. He did that with much excitement. For the first time, all the students became involved with his interests. On my last day at the school, Marco proudly showed me his school lunch. He had made it from his garden, a small salad. Thank you for listening to my speech.